Very much, Mr. Chairman, and I just want to acknowledge everyone, the leaders, the members, and all the Nigerians participating. My own topic goes to the matter of proportional representation in our democracy for inclusive governance. And I want to really acknowledge all the great speeches that we've heard, especially from the women. If you want to clap, clap. So we're discussing this within the context of the need for a new constitution for our country. So I thought that in laying my context, I should really make the point that the assumption that Nigeria is an exceptionalism is a fallacy. There is no exceptionalism about our country. The truth is that it is an urban legend for us as Nigerians to constantly think that our complexity has never existed anywhere else in the world. It has existed, and there have been problems expressed properly in order that solutions could be found. And empirical evidence abound showing that there is no aspect of our problems that one country or the other did not have and solve. So that's my number one key point, to say that one of the things that has kept us unable to move and shift the needle on the conversation on what kind of a society we want to build is this impression that somehow we are exceptional, and so that we cannot find pathways that have been tested and proven to work. You know, I have a mantra. That mantra is, in God I trust. Everyone else must bring data. You know, the thing about this conversation on the Constitution that has made it difficult for us to make progress is that we have not been data-led. We have not been scientifically led. We've not allowed empiricism and analysis to support and project why we all must think of the necessity to correct deformities, dysfunctions, and distortions that obviously are hobbling us. When we understand that, then it would not be necessary for us to have arguments that are not underpinned by the kind of evidence that shows that structure and function go hand in hand to produce better outcomes. That's what research shows us. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Chair, nothing in our destiny consigns us to massive failures of the kind that we face on all fronts. Nothing in our destiny suggests that values, our politics, our democracy, our governance, rule of law, institutions building, effective regulatory frameworks, order and stability, economy, economic growth, prosperity, development, socio-cultural issues, inclusion, social cohesion, equality, and equity cannot operate within our territorial boundaries. Nothing in our destiny suggests that we cannot achieve these desirables. So, in this all-important debate that we are having, the dialogue that we're having on the necessity for a constitutional democracy that works for all, it is important that we should be willing to reset our minds and embrace the mantra of all things are possible to them that believe. Ladies and gentlemen, why does a new constitution matter? It turns out that research has shown that in political systems, structure acts as a powerful determinant that shapes political outcomes, often more than ideological intentions and individual leadership. Did you hear what I said? So, according to research, structure acts as a powerful determinant that shapes political outcomes more than ideological intentions or individual leadership. Constitutional architecture fundamentally constrains political possibilities. A presidential system, for example, creates different incentives than a parliamentary one. And I leave Obong Atta, who is a specialist in that conversation about parliamentary or presidential. Federal structures distribute power differently than unitary states, creating multiple centers of authority that must negotiate rather than operate a single hierarchy. All of these things are the structural issues affecting our capabilities to optimize our endowments. So, ladies and gentlemen, historical examples show that structures and the durability of them can determine how far a people will go. We're solving for what precisely? When protagonists for a new constitution put their voices out there championing the cause. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're solving for distortions, for dysfunction, and for structural deficiencies. And what does research show? In a place of distortion, dysfunction, and structural deficiency, there is absolutely no pathway to productivity and competitiveness. If there is no pathway to productivity of our country, to the competitiveness of our country, in a world that is led by competitiveness, where are we headed for? Where are we headed for? We can jump around in circles, but research shows this. It is only people who do not intend to go anywhere that will be told that research has proven some things, and you argue against it. Why? It doesn't make sense. So my own specific conversation, having laid this context, is the proportional representation issue. It refers to the general principle that is found in electoral systems in which the popularly chosen subgroups or parties of an electorate are reflected proportionately in the elected body. For example, if a party receives 30% of the votes, then it should ideally receive approximately 30% of the seats in parliament. It is a core principle on the basis of the idea that you cannot exclude people from the process of governance just because they are minorities or because they do not have the power that others with advantage have. Ladies and gentlemen, the principle has a historical justification that was eloquently stated by John Stuart Mill in 1861, and this is his quote: "In a really equal democracy, every or any section would be represented, not disproportionately, but proportionately. A majority of the electors would always have a majority of the representatives, but a minority of the electors would always have a minority of the representatives." Mr. Chairman, our democracy is in distress. One thing is clear: nobody is enjoying our democracy. But another thing is clear: none of us would like to give up our democracy. And the only way that we can assure it against the distress and then create a pattern for our governance on a good set of parameters is to have this conversation on the constitutional reform for our country. I just want to say that when we look at the various groups that are necessary to create proportional representation, the groups that are often excluded: women, young people, vulnerable groups, minorities, and people living with disabilities. And what has happened is that a proportional representation ensures that this does not become an embedded political culture. So, what does it say? It lays out some principles like fairness, principles like representation, legitimacy, and inclusion. So, what do we know of what we lose as a people if we do not have a constitutional process that enables us to entrench these core values? What we know, for example, when it concerns the women, is that data has shown us that our country ranks 181 out of 193 countries in the Interparliamentary Union 2024 report on women representation in parliament, with only 3.6 of National Assembly seats held by women. This stark underrepresentation is a product of both cultural and systemic barriers entrenched by the current order that we practice. Well, it turns out that we are destroying our possibilities, because data also shows that when women are included in governance, outcomes on public probity, public accountability, good governance, economic growth, stability have been higher than in places where this does not exist. So we harm ourselves, Mr. Chairman, by ignoring what is right in our faces. Ladies and gentlemen, countries who understand the full inclusion of their women in governance, they don't do it because we love our women. They do it because they love themselves. They know that it is injurious to the collective good for half the population of their society to be disconnected from the train of productivity and competitiveness. So don't do it for Nigerian women. Do it for yourselves. That is exactly what this is about. Mr. Chairman, in 2 minutes, I'll be done. The other group is, of course, the young people. Ladies and gentlemen, we're in the 21st century. So it happens that in this 21st century, we're talking about the fourth industrial revolution, and in fact, the fifth, right on its back. And this revolution is essentially a revolution of disruptive technologies. The one that you most know is AI, artificial intelligence. Now, what do you think is going on with this? What is going on with this is that the race is still wide open. So it means that nobody can claim we are the leading authorities yet. You know what that means? It suggests that if we got our constitutional processes right, there are incredible opportunities that we can tap into, and that comes through the second group that we're excluding right now in governance, the young people. Do you know that across the world, our continent is the youngest continent? Europe, average age of their population is 44 years. America, it is 38.9 years. In China, it is 39.2 years. In Latin America, it is 33 years. In India, it is 29 years. In Africa, in Britain, it is 41 years. In Africa, it is 18.9 years. If you were in the boardroom and deciding what continent you would focus on for the future and sustainability of your company, where would you invest? But guess what? 60% of the young people in Nigeria feel totally left out of governance. And guess another thing? In the sectors where they are thriving on their own, especially the technology sector, do you know what? they are leading. So, if we want the kind of economic development that will create prosperity on an inclusive basis, that will create stability, and give us this decent society we all pray for. Pray for. Well, prayer without works is null and void. So we cannot just pray for it now. We need to be led by the data that shows us clearly that proportional representation is a key and critical success factor for our country. And so, since we all agree, especially those that are here, that we need a constitution to enable us achieve all of these things, how then do we get to it? Mr. Chairman, this is my closing thought. It says that instead of this exercise that is a waste of national resources going on in the name of an amendment of a constitution that clearly creates all kinds of structural deformities and imbalances and dysfunction, we should ask the National Assembly to engage itself in a single issue amendment of the Constitution. A single issue, simply allowing for a constituent assembly that then gets together, I don't even lead up to that, that gets together on the basis of being elected by the citizens, underpinned by the right to a referendum on a no or yes basis on each issue that would drive our society to one where there is a common identity, a common vision, and a shared set of values. I thank you very much.